Hello, my name is Damon Friedman, co-founder and president of SOF Missions. As a 20-year veteran within Special Operations, I've gone through many challenges due to my military service and time in combat. We felt called to start SOF Missions to serve our fellow brothers and sisters in arms, focusing on suicide prevention and resiliency. Our mission at SOF Missions is to empower warriors to find purpose and be resilient. Since 2011, when we started the organization, almost 3 million men and women have deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the scars of war take a toll on their psychological, physical, social, and spiritual health. Many veterans feel a sense of hopelessness and a loss of purpose when they return to civilian life. They feel isolated and alone, unable to reconnect. And in the greatest of tragedies, over 20 veterans lose all hope and take their own lives. Our goal at SOF Missions is to provide veterans the tools and resources so that they don't become a statistic. We offer a unique approach to combating veteran suicide through a whole health intradisciplinary model. The Be Resilient program is a 4-pillar methodology that addresses the areas of psychological, physical, social, and spiritual wellness. We provide care through 3 delivery methods: medical clinics, retreats, and educational training. Since we started back in 2011, we have been able to reach veterans in all 50 states and have served over 3,000 veterans through the Be Resilient program. Being resilient is a multifaceted and complex issue. We know that to find a lasting solution, we have to address the whole warrior. Many challenges cannot be solved by providing the treatments and modalities of just one component, but by tackling them all. Now, we've expanded our services to include law enforcement and first responders. Together, we can make a lasting impact in the lives of warriors across the nation. To learn more, visit our website at sofmissions.org.
Proceed to your post assignment. All units proceed to your post assignment.
All right. This ain't just a show. This is a platform. Veteran built, battle tested. Welcome to the Misfit Nation. Yeah! In a room, built from boots on the ground, now we breaking the rules. 2 vets, 1 leader, painting the sound, turn scars into sermons, let them echo around. Authors with truth, musicians with fire, actors backstage chasing something higher. Entrepreneurs bleeding just to get ahead. If you fought for your dream, yeah, you are what you said. If they told you no, if you still came back, if you fell to your knees but you stayed on track, this is your voice, this is your flame. Say it loud, remember the name. No salvation, just elevation. We rise again. To the fight, from the fight to the end. We are the Misfit Nation. No damn labels, no damn cages. If you're still breathing, you belong. Turn it up. This is our song. Yeah. This is our song. Yeah. Veterans standing with ghosts in the chest. First responders running in while the world second guess. Gold star names carved deep in the soul. Your story ain't over, we carry the whole. Coaches teaching mindset, breaking the chains, turning barely alive into owning the pain. Truth over polish, scars on display. If it's real, let it bleed, that's the misfit play. If it's heavy right now, and the dark feels cold. If it's heavy right now, and the dark feels cold. If it's heavy right now, and the dark feels cold. It's operating right now, we're the more than you know. 9888, don't walk alone. Veterans press 1, bring it home. Don't trade forever for tonight. You're still needed in this fight. We are the
All right. Welcome back to the Misfit Nation. It's your Thursday after dinner edition. It's been a great week. Sunday, of course, we watched the U.S. men win the gold medal after the women won it on Thursday or Friday last week. We beat Canada 2 times, 2 gold medals, all that came home. All the athletes, great work, and they all should be home now. I'm sure a lot of you are doing media tours or getting back to your day-to-day jobs because many Olympians do have other jobs. Us here at the Misfit Nation, we just rock forward. We show what we do, we lead from the front, and we do what we have to do. Tonight, we have someone that's been doing that for a long time. Today on the Misfit Nation, we welcome retired United States Army Major Karl Monger. He's Ranger qualified leader, a licensed professional counselor, and founder of Gallant Few. For more than a decade, he has helped veterans navigate one of the toughest missions of their entire careers, or maybe their entire lives, transitioning from active duty to the civilian world. So without further ado, let's welcome United States Army veteran Karl Monger to the Misfit Nation. Welcome, Karl.
Hey, Rich. Nice to be here. Thank you for the nice introduction.
It's great to have you.
Gallant Few's been around now 16 years, which is pretty amazing.
16, nice. Time flies. Like you said in the green room, I started my podcast as you ended yours. So you passed that torch, and you've continuously passed the torch along since your leadership time in service and then now out of service as well. So thank you for all the service you have given to our country.
Appreciate it.
So, Karl, I gave basically the locker room speech, the elevator speech on you there. If you don't mind, give the Misfit Nation a little bit more about you from as far back as you want to go to how we got here on that ride.
Sure. I won't bore you with my entire life story, but born into a military family. I was born in Heidelberg, Germany. My father was a career sergeant, actually retired as a sergeant major in the Colorado National Guard. He left my family when I was about three and a half. And so early on, I got to be the man of the house. And to kind of bookend that, about 8 years ago, my biological parents reconnected and got remarried. So they were actually divorced for like over 50 years before they ended up getting back together, which is kind of cool. But that experience early on of being forced into a kind of leadership role in my family, I think played a role in developing some of the skills that led me ultimately to fall into the military. Never planned on going into the Army because of my father leaving. My mom steered me as far away from military stuff as she possibly could. But I got tricked when I was a student at Wichita State University. And I was looking for an easy A because, I was probably drinking a little too much beer, chasing too many women, and not doing enough studying. So I saw this advertisement on the wall of the engineering school for a marksmanship class. And I thought, I can get an easy A in a marksmanship class. Well, it turns out it was a ROTC class in disguise.
Oh, wow.
And as I fell in with a group there, they were led by a professor of military science who was a lieutenant colonel who had been special forces in Vietnam, Ranger Tab, had served in the 101st and the 82nd. And just if you've ever seen the Iron Mike statue with having the climbing rope slung over his body and the green beret on his head, that looked like this guy in real life. And so he, after being in the program for about 6 months, he pulled me aside and suggested that I apply for an ROTC scholarship. So I did. And the Army, in their infinite wisdom, decided to pay for 3 years of my school. Very first military school I went to was Airborne School in 1981. And when I say first military school, I mean the first military school. No basic training, no ROTC advanced camp, just boom, college student going to Airborne School.
Wow.
And very, very rude awakening, but I was like a Forrest Gump, right? Round peg in a round hole, and I fit, and I was hooked. And from there, that was the year before I would have gone to advanced camp. I tried to get them to send me to Ranger School that following year, but they didn't. They sent me to the advanced camp instead. So I graduated from Wichita State, had a regular Army commission, and went straight in as an infantry officer. So I did my infantry officer basic training, Fort Benning, 1983, Ranger School after that. Then I did 3 years at the 9th Infantry Division, which at that time was at Fort Lewis, then Fort Lewis, and got to work with some great guys my very first battalion commander there was a guy named Glenn Hale, who was a 3rd Ranger Battalion commander. I think he was the 2nd or 3rd one. Got exposed to some of the folks from the Ranger Regiment at that time. Did my 3 years there, platoon leader, support platoon leader, company executive officer, back to Benning for the advanced course, then off to Hawaii, where I served in the 25th Infantry Division and was a company commander and a staff officer there. My battalion commander there was a guy named Jim Dubik, who was a founding platoon leader in the 2nd Ranger Battalion, was a company commander in 2nd Ranger Battalion, was I think he was the XO at 1st Ranger Battalion, and ultimately ended up retiring as a 3-star. He was the Min Sticky commander in Iraq for a long time. And our brigade commander was a guy named Dave Oley. And Dave Oley had been a Ranger LRP leader in Vietnam. He retired as a 3-star general. He actually sat in the seat that his replacement was killed when the terrorist attack, when the plane hit the Pentagon. That was the highest ranking officer that died that day. My company first sergeant was Jimmy Acuna. Jimmy Acuna had been a Ranger in a LRP unit, 4th Infantry Division, if I remember right, in Vietnam. And he was absolutely phenomenal. And being exposed to all of these people got me really kind of thinking about what was I going to do with my military career. Jim Dubik called me in his office one day and encouraged me to put in a packet for Ranger Regiment. So I went and I was accepted, did 3 years at 1st Ranger Battalion, was there during Desert Storm, got a very brief deployment and credit with a combat tour, got a right shoulder patch. We did a show of force parachute infiltration into Ali Salim Airfield, the end of 1981. And 1982, we did Jungle Operations Training Center. And then the following year, 1 year after, I might be mixing up my dates a little bit, but October of 1992, we had a helicopter crash. Special operations bird crashed in the Great Salt Lake, and it killed the 1st and the 3rd Ranger Battalion commanders, Harvey Moore, who was the Charlie Company 175 First Sergeant, Meshach and Bird, who were 2 RTOs that I, as the assistant S3 of the battalion at that time, I usually traveled with them. If the S3 went in the alternate talk, I was with the battalion commander, right? So it was one of those things where probably in another world, I would have been on that bird that crashed. So that set in motion a sequence of events that led me ultimately a year later to decide to leave the military. And it was a rapid decision. I had been promised command of a Ranger company by 2 different battalion commanders. One of them was killed in that helicopter crash. The other one was his replacement. And that guy wasn't able to stay there long term because he hadn't commanded a battalion in Big Army. So he had to leave after 4 months, wrote me an OER, confirmed I was going to command a Ranger company. And the guy that came in decided he wanted to have a different captain command that Ranger company. And so I got my feelings hurt, said, screw the Army, got out. I mean, I was at almost exactly the 10-year mark, about 2 months over the 10-year mark from when I had entered active duty. And as I left the military with at that time, the Ranger High and Tight, and I go back to Wichita, Kansas, where I had grown up, where my starter wife's parents and grandparents lived there. My parents and grandparents lived there, my stepdad. And I wanted my daughters to be able to experience family because I had moved so much and my family had been so broken when I was young. I really wanted them to experience family. So I turned down the opportunity to work for some large companies with a top secret clearance and go to Wichita, Kansas and try and figure it out. And I stumbled for the next 4 or 5 years. I tried to do some reserve time, but going from a Ranger battalion to an Army Reserve Center is like jumping off a train and hitting a brick wall. It just, it's not a great fit. And got promoted to major. I actually left active duty as a captain, got promoted to major in the reserves, and then went inactive and had back surgery around 1997. During that time frame, the late, let's say 1995 to 2000, I would engage with veterans that worked at the companies that I worked at. One young guy in particular, he's passed away now, but his first name is Darren. And he was a mechanic at the 7-Up bottler that I worked at initially. And he was convinced that he was being watched. He was convinced that something bad was going to happen to him. I think there were some drugs involved and alcohol and some other substances, and he wasn't sleeping a whole lot. And I took him under my wing and ended up getting him committed into a mental health facility that really got him squared away. And ultimately, later on, he ended up going back into the National Guard, and I think got promoted all the way up to major before he ended up passing away. But that started me on my paying attention to veteran things. Because, and interrupt me if I'm talking way too much, because once I start going and I'm on a roll, sometimes it's hard to get me stopped because the thoughts, they just start kind of tumbling around in my head. But during that time frame, when I left the Army, I had there's a saying in the Ranger Regiment that all of a sudden somebody's there one day and they're gone the next. What happened to them? Oh, the Black Chinook took them away. Right. And that typically means something bad happened and they're basically thrown out of regiment for not meeting standards or for something else. That didn't happen to me, but I felt like it happened to me. Right. There was a ceremony at the end, got my second meritorious service medal pin on my chest. Thank you very much for your service. And then I headed out. But as I left, I felt like the Black Chinook had taken me away. I didn't feel like I belonged to the regiment anymore. And so I isolated from other Rangers. When I got back to Wichita, if I bumped into somebody that I knew from high school or college, and they would say, "Hey, didn't you go in the Army?" And I'd say, "Yeah." And they'd say, "Well, what'd you do in the Army?" And I would say, "Well, I was an infantry officer," because nobody gives a crap about, they don't even know what that is, right? But if I say, "Yeah, I was an officer in the Ranger Regiment there," then they would be like, "Oh, well, wow, tell me about that." Well, now I got to pull up the memory of the failure, not getting the company, the deaths. All of that stuff kind of compounds on top of it. So I just completely avoided it, stayed completely away from the community. And I didn't realize at the time how much damage that was doing to me emotionally by staying away from the community. 9/11 happened, right? I see a week later that the Ranger Regimental Commander, at that time, Colonel Joe Votel, led the regiment into the jump on Objective Rhino in Afghanistan. And Lieutenant Colonel Steve Bannock was the 3rd Ranger Battalion commander. Steve Bannock, when I got to 175, I was one of the many assistant S3 project officer captains. Then I became the S1, and then I became the S3. So I was the personnel officer for the battalion, and was that during most of Desert Storm. Then I was the assistant S3. Well, Joe Votel was the S3 when I was the assistant S3. And when he was the battalion XO, when the opportunity to command the company was taken away, he's the first one I said, "Hey, sir, this is it. I think I'm done with the Army. I'm going to get out." And so now I'm like, and Steve Bannock replaced me as the S1. So we left seat right seated for about a month. So now I'm looking at the news and I'm going, holy cow, if I'd have swallowed my pride, if I'd have stayed in, woulda, coulda, shoulda, what might have been different. And what happened was I got motivated to, I was still in the Army Reserve System, although I was inactive at that time because of the back surgery that I'd had. But I fired off an email to Joe Votel through the AKO email system. And I said, "I'm proud, I'm jealous, wished I could be there. Please pass along the thanks of a grateful nation to everybody that's with you." And 2 days later, he emailed me back from Afghanistan. Wow. And as we reconnected, he ended up inviting me to the Ranger Regiment Change of Command in July 2003. And a invitation comes in the mail, in the snail mail, inviting me to the Ranger Regiment Change of Command. And I did not want to go. But when you're invited by the commander that led the regiment into Afghanistan to deliver the response to the terrorist attacks, you get a personal invitation, you go. So my plan was, I'm going to go. This was still then Building 4. Now it's Wickham McGinnis Hall, but big parade field in front of then Building 4, where they would set up bleachers and they would do the change of command there, right next to the Ranger Monument. And so I'm walking up to the back of the bleachers, and my plan is kind of hide over to the side. I've got a digital camera. I'm going to take some photos. I'm going to slink out before anybody goes, "Hey, 10 years ago you quit. You quit the regiment. Why are you here?" And there was a young private standing in the sidewalk at the entrance to the bleachers, and he had a clipboard. And he said, "Sir, what's your name?" And I said, "Son, I am not on your list. I'm just going to go hang out over here." And he insisted to know my name. So I told him my name. He looked at his clipboard and he said, "Oh, you're on the list. Follow me." And Votel had put me center row, center mass, front and center with, there were admirals and generals and politicians and me sitting right there. And afterwards, he greeted me. It was almost like I had never left. And in that moment, he brought me back into the community, and he made it okay to talk to the guys that I knew that had stayed in. Now it had been almost 10 years to the day since I had walked out of the 1st Ranger Battalion. And as I'm talking to them, and oh, by the way, over the previous 10 years, I'd gone through a divorce, fought with the VA about benefits, you know, the typical thing that you do when you're in any kind of a volunteer unit in the military is you lie about your physical condition, because if your back is giving you issues or your hip is giving you issues, then you might not be able to continue jumping. You might not be able to do Ranger things. So you don't talk about those things, which means you don't get seen for those things, which means it's not in your medical record, which means it's not service connected. So you go through, so I've been through all of that when I got out. Thank God there was an entry in there about back. So the VA had no issues with giving me a disability rating for my back. So divorce, fighting with the VA, never seen a mental health professional. Oh, wow. Preferred to have several drinks rather than, you know, talk about something. And I went through, in that 10 years that I was out, I probably went through 6 different jobs at 3 different companies and 4 different companies by that time. So my transition is about as screwed up a transition as you possibly can have. So now I'm standing there at Fort Benning talking with men who are E7s and E8s who I knew when they were E5s and E6s. And I'm talking to lieutenant colonels who I knew when they were lieutenants and captains. And I can see that they're going through divorces. They're drinking instead of talking to mental health professionals. Some of them are getting ready to get out. They have no idea what they're going to do. And so in that moment, I decided to start using this brand new thing on social media called social networking. And I started setting up groups for Rangers. First one I did was MySpace. And then I did one on Facebook. And then I did one on LinkedIn. The LinkedIn one has become the primary one. It's still out there. It's got, I don't know, last time I checked, maybe 8,000 Rangers that are in the group.
Wow.
And as I set this up, I would work at my job during the day. I'd come home at night, get on my laptop, and I would look to see what Rangers I could connect. And, you know, started out with a couple, and they knew somebody and they knew somebody. And every Ranger that would come and join this LinkedIn group or any of the other groups, I would either talk on the phone or I would figure out some way to communicate with them. And I would ask them, well, what's the 3rd stanza of the Ranger Creed? Who's your squad leader? You know, stuff just to verify that they were, if I didn't stand in formation with them, I wanted to know that they were legitimately who they were, because now we're 2.5 years into the War on Terror. And Ranger networking group on social media is a target for bad actors overseas. And we had some of them that tried to get into the group. But as this thing built, it was Rangers from World War II at that time, wow, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, all the way up to some that were still on active duty. And everyone that I would connect with, I would ask them, where do you live? Where do you want to live? Are you going to school? What's your job? How's your marriage? How much do you drink? Have you been to the VA? Right. And I would just start going through all the lessons learned that I knew from my personal experience. And then I would find the nearest closest Ranger using a zip code search in LinkedIn, and I would introduce them and connect them. And I would let that would be it. I would just connect them and I would say, good luck, guys, you know, take care of each other. And from 2003 to 2009, that group grew to be about 1,000 Rangers. And it became very effective. And I ended up completely untrained in this. I ended up developing the skills to prevent suicide. I've talked to Rangers that have sat in the front seat of their truck with a shotgun and a bottle of Jack Daniels, and they're ready to end it. And a 2-hour conversation at night with a Ranger like that is not a pleasant thing to go through. but that guy's still alive, and he's married. He's got kids now. And so in 2009, I was working for a big general contractor in Kansas, building sports arenas, and I was running their heavy crane division. And one of their biggest customers was Cessna Aircraft. Cessna Aircraft had these goals to build this great big, they were going to start competing with Learjet, build bigger jets. And then the auto executives flew their private aviation to DC to testify how much their business sucked and how they needed help. And immediately the media crucified them for flying jets to beg for money from the government. And the net result of that is corporate aviation orders dried up, which meant Cessna decided they weren't going to build this new facility and make more airplanes, which meant my company now had parked all the other jobs so they could take on this $300 million project that now vanished. And family-owned business, I wasn't a family member, and I found myself on the sidewalk again, trying to figure out, well, what the hell do I do next? Right about that time, somebody had talked to me about service disabled veteran-owned small business. And so I started getting educated in that, and I started exploring what that might look like to sell some things to the government using the SDVO status. And I got a business partner who was not a veteran, but a really good sales guy, and we started trying to build that up. But at the same time, I started thinking about this Ranger network that I had built. And how could I turn that into something that was much more effective? When I left, kind of going back into early days, pre-military, my best friend in the world was a guy named Bill. And Bill and I were in ROTC together. And he had taken a little diversion, ended up having to stay in university for another year. So he was a year later coming on to active duty than me. He went the mech infantry route, ended up commanding a Bradley company in Germany. And he did it 5 or 6 years, and then he got out. He had a plan. He was working his plan. He had decided his family business, his family had been in either construction or agriculture. So he was very familiar with machinery. So he went to work for a construction equipment dealership. And he started off as their service manager, and then he got promoted to be a sales guy. And as I come back, the very first, when I got back, the first job interview that I had going all the way back to 1993 was with one of the largest privately held oil and gas companies in the world. They're based in Wichita, Kansas. Not too hard to figure out who they are. Their human resource director, I'm sitting in an interview, and that person looked at me and said, my Google thing, it thinks I'm trying to do a search over here. I must have said something smart. Looked at me across the table and said, "Oh, wow, Army officer, you guys are real good at following orders and doing what you're told, but here at this company, we need people that have initiative, think outside the box, and don't need constant supervision." Couldn't have been more insulting to me. I'm thinking, I was the S1 of the 1st Ranger Battalion. You get out of your chair, I'll do your job, and I'll do it better than you in a month. But that wasn't the story, so I packed up all my stuff and I left. So I ended up going to work for my buddy at the construction equipment dealership. And this was second job after I got out of the military, but he's talking to me about coming to work for him as the sales guy because he's being promoted to run the branch. And I told him, I don't think that's a good idea because I bought cars before, so salesmen don't impress me. And I've never run a backhoe. A skid steer loader, sounds like a disaster. And he said, in the military, you demonstrated discipline, integrity, and the ability to learn. And if you decide you want to do this, I will coach you and mentor you, and we'll be successful. And so I took him up on it, and I was successful at it. Successful enough that I got picked up by another company through a headhunter to make more money, and then ended up coming back to work for Bill at a different construction company later on. But through that whole time, he was the one force that really tempered my military experience and tried to help me turn it into a civilian experience. It's important that I tell you that story because I'm going to come back to it here in a little bit. So when, as a matter of fact, I'll come back to it right now because he and I were sitting in a restaurant having a beverage, and I'm telling him about this Ranger network that I built. He's not a Ranger. but I'm telling him about the network, and I'm saying, I think that this could be a thing that could help more veterans. And he said, well, it sounds like it's not just applicable to Rangers. It sounds to me like it would work for veterans like me. So, what are you thinking about doing? And I said, I don't know. I really have no idea. And he said, well, you should start a nonprofit. And he reached into his wallet. He always kept a $100 bill behind his driver's license for emergencies. And he slid it across the table and he said, here's your first donation, get started.
Wow.
And so as I'm trying to dual track, start a service disabled veteran-owned small business, start a nonprofit, I ended up completely diverting into the nonprofit world. And for the first couple of years, I coached and mentored a couple of Rangers, but more non-Rangers than Rangers. The next year was about 100. The year after that, we started getting a little traction. We had a Ranger that did a cross-country run, 565 miles in a month. Corey Smith, as he left the 3rd Ranger Battalion, and if we have time, I can tell you his story. But somebody reached out to me and said, hey, you help Rangers transition. Talk to Corey and see if you can help him. So I guided him through his journey. We collected some donations to pay his expenses. And at the end of it, we had a couple of $1,000s left over. So we said, okay, who's going to run 565 miles next year? And we didn't find any volunteers. So we decided to create a team event. Can you take on 565 miles in a month? And the math works out to be about 2.5 miles a day. And raise money using some of the online platforms. The first year we did it as a fundraising event, I think it was 2013, 14, that time frame, we raised $120,000.
Wow.
And it only cost us about $3,000 or $4,000 to do. And every year after that, up to COVID, we built this fundraiser up to where it was about $400,000 a year with expenses of about 80 to 90, because now we're doing t-shirts and offering some incentives. And now we've got a more robust donation platform. And COVID and everybody doing virtual events kind of slowed all of that down. And so now we're still in the process of building that back up. But through the process of that journey, we went from an organization that had a vision of being like Big Brothers, Big Sisters for veterans. So if you're a cook that served in Germany in the 80s, then we want to connect you with a cook that served in Germany in the 2005s, right? And let you help that younger veteran who has your same military experience have a better transition than if they were just turned loose on their own. Along the way, I started using the analogy of a map and compass. And when you think about, if you've ever had to use a lensatic compass, especially at night, right? If you're going through any kind of vegetated area, whether it's a jungle or a forest, you have to rely on that little glowing needle that you've dialed the azimuth, and you've got to rely on that to get you where you're going. Before you can dial that azimuth in, you've got to know 2 very important pieces of information. And the first one is, where are you right now? Because if you're not accurate where you're starting, your azimuth is not going to be accurate. And then you've got to know what your destination is, right? When you have those 2 bits of information, now you can shoot the azimuth to get there. And while you're walking on that azimuth, you run into spider webs. You walk right up to big trees. There may be a creek or a gully that runs across in front of you. You can't walk a straight line, so you end up having to divert around it. But to get to where you're going, you have to get back on your azimuth, or you have to shoot a new azimuth, right? But you've got to create and get back on an azimuth to get to your objective. When you take that terminology into military transition, when I left the military, I did not do a solid assessment of where am I right now today, right? I did not say, where do I want to be in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? What I did was I set out walking an azimuth and I just started looking for jobs. So luck of the draw, I got a job that I didn't like, right? Which meant I was going to leave it and I was going to have to go somewhere else. But again, didn't know what I wanted to do. Crap, I'm desperate, need health care for my kids. Let's just go find something that pays the bills. A lot of veterans that I work with have started their transition journey exactly in that manner. I talked to veterans that served in Vietnam 50 years ago. They left the military and they did not identify where they wanted to be 50 years later. And so now when they look back in hindsight, they're like, man, if I'd have had a plan then, I would not be where I am now. My favorite philosopher, Yogi Berra, he used to say, if you don't know where you're going, you'll probably end up someplace else. And that is exactly what I've seen a lot of veterans do. So as Gallant Few developed, we developed a tool that we call the azimuth check. And the azimuth check is a 25-statement self-assessment. It revolves around what we call the Gallant Few star. So if you imagine a star, especially in the state of Texas, 5-pointed star, right? Looks just like the one on the Texas flag for some reason, but 5 points on that star. And the star stands for self-training and responsibility, because you have to take response. You have to take responsibility to train yourself, right? I can show you the way, but I can't make you walk that azimuth. You have to choose to do that. And responsibility is really broken into two words. Stephen Covey said, it's the ability to choose your response dash ability, the ability to choose your response. I can have a glass of water sitting here, or I could have had a glass of whiskey sitting here. I can choose that, right? I don't have to do any one certain thing because I have PTSD, or because my back hurts, or because I have a bad relationship. I can choose every minute of every day a choice that's going to work out in the long term for me. So that's part of learning how to do that. The star has 5 points. Each point is an area of fitness. We don't talk emotional wellness, because wellness to me is a wishy-washy term. We talk emotional fitness, because when you say fitness to a military person, fitness implies measurement. How many push-ups can you do? How fast can you run, right? How much can you squat? How far can you throw the ball, if they're doing that now? They keep changing up the PT test. So I don't know what yeah. But so the 5 points of the star are emotional fitness, physical fitness, spiritual fitness, professional fitness, social fitness. And we have a 25-statement self-assessment that's organized into those 5 areas. So there are 5 statements in each of the 5 areas. And in the emotional fitness area, there is a statement. It's our key statement in the whole 25. And it asks you to rate on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 not at all, 10 a whole bunch. I believe life is worth living. When I talk to a veteran, if I say, are you thinking about suicide? They immediately say no, because they don't want to lose their weapons. They don't want to have things taken away from them, whatever. But if I say life worth living 1 to 10, where are you at? I get 6s and 7s and 8s. 7 out of 10 life worth living tells me 30% chance you've thought about or are thinking about suicide. Am I accurate? And I'll get stuff happens. Okay, let's talk about the stuff. So that gets me into what's going on in their life. The 7 now is start point. If your life was a 9 out of 10 instead of a 7 out of 10, what's the difference between here and there? If they can articulate that, that becomes destination. Now we have to chart an azimuth from 7 to 9. What does that look like? Whether it's peer-to-peer mentoring, some sort of a wellness retreat, whether it's a counseling, whatever that is for that individual person, then we want to encourage them to find out what that is and then walk that path. As that developed, we brought on board a couple of tools, one of which is subconscious restructuring, developed by Dr. Kelly Burris of the Burris Institute. Subconscious restructuring is cognitive behavioral therapy in a box that a layperson can deliver, peer-to-peer type stuff. If you want to be, joke about it, it's kind of like life coaching, but it's in a very organized fashion. So I can train veterans to deliver these workshops that help you understand the power of your internal self-talk and the power of having a visualization of what success looks like. And if we have time, that's the second thing I'll come back to. Okay. The third thing then that we added in, we do what we call the 3 C's: connecting, coaching, counseling. And connecting is events. We do veteran breakfasts. We take veterans. I just tonight had a 2-hour indoor rock climbing session with 7 veterans. Nice. So we do events like that. They're connecting type things. The second C is coaching, and that's where the subconscious restructuring comes in, peer-to-peer stuff. And the third C is clinical counseling. So I went back, I decided right before COVID, 2019, I decided to go back to school, get my master's degree in rehabilitation counseling. And so now I'm a licensed professional counselor, licensed in Texas and Colorado.
Nice.
So we bring that approach depending on what that person needs based on the azimuth check. We plug them into the things that will help them maybe be more successful in their transition.
That's amazing.
Man, that was a whole lot. I talked for like an hour and a half.
And you hit almost every question I had planned in my head. You hit all of them, so I didn't have anything left. The 3 C's was the last thing I was going to talk to you about. And I was actually looking at the picture as you're talking about going to the rock climbing wall. And there's 3 guys right in front of the wall with their harnesses on. And those walls, they look like they're so fun because they're all the colors and stuff. They're pretty. But then when you start getting on there and have to think your way through each shape and where the foothold is, where your handhold is, getting to the top. Sometimes it takes that coach at the bottom yelling up, go left, or try the one to the right. And I'm sure what you said 7, I think you said you had tonight. Having 7 of them there, it probably becomes competitive too when you have veterans together with that hard-headedness.
There's a little bit of that.
Who can get up there?
If the Marines do well, we offer them crayons, as rewards.
Not melted. You don't like them melted.
Nope, not. Sometimes they're chilled. One of the little scenarios that really illustrated how important that type of activity is came with a veteran named Nate. Nate was an infantry veteran, National Guardsman, activated, did time in Iraq, and came back with post-traumatic stress and some chemical imbalances like lithium and some other things that were off in his body. And he's having lots of symptoms, one of which is can't talk on the telephone because he was talking through, I think it was a landline, to somebody who was hit with a mortar and that person was killed. So now every time he gets on a telephone, it brings the PTSD back up and it just causes huge issues for him. And so we had just started the rock climbing program. It was pretty new. And this is probably about 10 years ago. And I got a message from his wife. And she said, my husband was doing some Googling and he was looking for something for veterans and he found this program. Can he come? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Let me talk to him. Oh, he can't talk on the phone. Okay, so when's he coming? Then she described a little bit about his situation. So she told me what day he was going to come. I told her what time we start. And I got there a little early and I watched my watch for the time that he was supposed to show up because the climbing gym, it's noisy, it's smelly, right? It's chaotic. There's kids running around. There's all kinds of activity, overstimulation to the max. And so I'm watching the door opens up. This guy comes in. He's got a kind of a scruffy beard and he's wearing camouflage like BDU pants that are cut off above the knee. And he has an old unit PT t-shirt with the sleeves ripped off. I know that that's Nate. He takes one step inside, looks around, turns around, and starts to open the door to go back out. And I called out his name and he stopped and he looked at me and I said, step 1, sign the waiver. Step 2, draw your gear. Step 3, go through the orientation. Step 4, come find me. So put him into military round robin, right? So, and he did that. He did all these things. And about a half an hour later, he comes and he finds me. And I'm like, just in time, let's hook you up. Let's put you on the wall. And so if you've never rock climbed before, it's hard. Right? It's not a natural thing that people do after the age of 8. But getting up on the wall, it's a challenge. So we put him on one of the easiest routes that was in the gym. And it took him a while. He struggled. And a couple of times he wanted to quit. And I said, nope, you rest right there. I'll hold you on the rope. And you just keep going till you get to the top. And everybody else is encouraging him. And finally he makes it up to the top. I lower him down, and as soon as his feet hit the ground, he goes to his knees, covers his face with his hands, and for half a minute, he's just like that. And we're kind of looking at each other, not really knowing. This is the first time this has happened to us. We really don't know what's going on here. And he looked up at me after that. He had tears in his eyes, and he said, that was the first time in the last 3 years that my mind was clear because all I could think about was that wall. So I unclipped my end of the rope, handed it to him and said, nice, now it's my turn. And he said, you want me to belay you? And I said, well, yeah, you went through the training, right? Yes. You passed? Yes. Okay, I trust you. Let's go. And I climbed, I survived. A year later, he started coming routinely. A year later, he's thinking about this last year in his life. And he says, you remember a year ago when you had me belay you for the first time? And I said, yeah, I remember. And he said, that was the first time since I left the military that I was trusted with anything valuable.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, so things like that, right? They seem like they're not much,
Right.
but for the individual that participates there, it's absolutely huge.
It definitely opens their mind. Like you said, it took that block out of his mind to be able to focus on that wall. The one thing he had to focus on was that wall, and nothing else. All the noise is able to shut off at that time. There's a lot of
And if you have injuries and things that are hard to diagnose, then people start treating you like you're weak, you're a crybaby, you're a whiner, you're a shirker. And then your self-image starts going down, 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 down. And when nobody trusts him with anything, your self-image can get destroyed in a pretty short period of time. So now he went back to school. I got him a full medical workup. So they figured out a lithium deal. He got post-traumatic stress therapy. He can talk on the phone to people now. He actually went and graduated from watchmaker school. So now he's a watch guy, which is kind of cool.
Wow, that's amazing. Didn't know that was an actual school. Thought it was just like
It is, yeah.
A trade that your grandpappy taught you or something. But that's awesome.
Right.
Got a couple questions from the audience came in while you were talking here. The first one is from JG91. What is the most overlooked challenge veterans face when during transition? Thank you, JG.
The most overlooked challenge. I wonder if JG means from the veteran or from other people next to the veteran.
I think it's the veterans themselves, what he's talking about.
The veterans themselves. So the most overlooked challenge, where do you want to be in 20 years? What's your destination, right? Like I talked about before, that is, in my opinion, the number one issue. But that goes into a million different things. Because if you're having problem, so this is one of the stories that I wanted to come back to. So JG, thank you for bringing that up. There are 4-star generals on active duty right now that have basic airborne wings.
Yep.
Basic 4-star general, been on active duty 30 years, and you're a 5-jump chump. Why is that? Well, they probably, when they were a cadet at the military academy or ROTC, like me, probably in the summertime, they're like, hey, you want to go to jump school? Well, jump school it's not easy. It's dangerous. Georgia in August, when cadets go, is pretty miserable. It's something that it's an unpleasant experience, right? But you get these shiny silver wings at the end of it if you graduate that you get to wear on your uniform for the rest of your military career. What would happen if the Army said, anybody can volunteer to go to jump school? We think it's great training, builds character, all of that stuff. But you don't need wings, because if you're in the 82nd or if you're in an airborne unit, Ranger Regiment, you got a patch on your shoulder. Everybody knows you jump out of airplanes. So we don't need wings anymore. Let's just do away with wings. If they did that, how many would continue to go to airborne school? Like that 4-star general that has basic airborne wings. They'd probably be like, screw that. Why would I? Because in a 30-year career, a leader like that could get themselves into an airborne unit, right? They would have senior or master wings. So the human principle, and every person is like this, is to gravitate towards pleasure and away from pain. When you think about the experience of jump school or ranger school, 8 weeks, starvation, no sleep, but you get this black and gold ranger tab at the end of it, right? That holy grail of an award that's out there at the end, if that didn't exist, how many people would not go or would quit ranger school? I probably would have, because, I mean, screw this, right? the pleasure of the award at the end is greater than the pain it takes to get there. If the pleasure of that award at the end is not greater than the pain it takes to get there, then you're going to divert to something that's more pleasurable. So when you think about a relationship, maybe it's your marriage, maybe it's a relationship with your boss or somebody. If that relationship is not what you want it to be, it's more pleasurable to avoid addressing the issues in that relationship than it is to address the issues in the relationship. That's pain, to address the issues in the relationship. If you have a vision of what a successful relationship looks like on the other end, what's your airborne wings or your ranger tab for your relationship? What's the award at the end of that? What's that look like? If that's more pleasurable than the pain it takes to you to get there, then you will push through the pain and you'll make the changes that it takes to have a successful relationship. If you don't have that vision at the end, the destination, just like with the map and compass, if you don't have that destination, you're going to divert to something more pleasurable, which might be an affair, which might be just getting a divorce, which might be who knows what, right? So, and this is a conversation I've had at least 3 different times with veterans in counseling sessions this week. Ultimately, if you're trying to stop tobacco, stop drinking, fix a relationship, whatever that is, what's the pleasure that's greater than the pain it's going to take to achieve it? And that the question that JG asked is, the most overlooked thing is, what does success look like for you? And when you're military transition, when you are like, man, my military transition was awesome, what does that look like? Because that then can establish the path you need to walk to make that awesomeness a reality. Without that, you're going to divert to something that's pleasurable that maybe doesn't work, and then divert to something else that's pleasurable. And you're basically pinging all over the place, and getting to the real destination is going to be really difficult.
Definitely is. If you don't have that goal ahead of you, you're not going to push yourself. And like you said, when you stumbled out the gates from your transition, my stumble took 365 days. So I knew I was going to be just as successful as everyone else when I came out the gate as a transitioning senior NCO. Because all my buddies that transitioned, they fell right into those awesome jobs. So I knew that awesome job would be there, and I did the work just to get to that awesome job. The fact was, all those jobs were taken because we've been at war at that point for nearly 15 years. A lot of the workforce was younger because they were retiring younger or getting out younger and staying in those jobs. So a lot of those jobs weren't available. So I put all my eggs in that one basket, and the basket cracked. So I had to find my way back. So 365 days exactly to find that first job. And like you, I didn't like my first job, but I stayed in it because I didn't want to be that statistic of the veteran that comes out and stays for less than a year. So I stayed 2 until I found the job I actually like. And now I'm happy with my day job now. I enjoy getting up and going there. I get to go to work now. I don't got to go to work anymore.
That's a great attitude to have. I get to do this. I don't have to do this. Absolutely.
So I think if a lot of our brothers and sisters start to get that mindset in there, that they put that work in on the way out, or realize as soon as you raise your hand the first time, there's an end date and you have to transition at some point. It either through ETS, injury, or retirement. You're going to get out of the military. You can't stay in forever. While it's a great job, you can't stay in forever. I don't care who you are. You have to get out and transition. How many people have you met that just didn't realize that it's going to end, or just didn't really put that whole picture together?
A lot, right? I can't give you a count, but I will tell you that we do a lot of work with the active duty 75th Ranger Regiment, and we're embedded into the Ranger for Life transition program. We go to each battalion once a year, and we do a seminar for any Rangers that are 18 months out from reenlisting or leaving the military. And the regiment's policy is the leader, the immediate leader for that. If it's private, the team leader comes, they have to come and go through the briefing with them.
Wow.
And the reasoning for that is that is a high-risk environment. You could have somebody that graduates from RASP, and on their first parachute jump in training, they have malfunction or something happens, they break their back, they have an injury, and now they can't be a Ranger anymore. They're 19 years old, and they're being medically retired and probably 100% VA disability. What the heck are you going to do for the rest of your life? Never even thought about it, right? And so So we engage with, and we make them aware of the resources that are out there for those that it does unfortunately happen to. And then the other ones, we start talking to them about what can they do today. It's a destination thing. When you leave the military, what do you want to do? What's your life going to be like? And can you take advantage of the resources the military has now to start training, to start getting a certification? If you want to be an IT person, or if you want to be a project manager, there are things that you can do while you're on active duty that can set you up for greater success after you get out. And you're right. Every single person that goes in the military is going to leave the military, right? It's a matter of time, how and when. And once they realize that and start planning for that eventuality, you do, if you're super healthy and you go in when you're 18 years old and you do 20 years, you come out and you're 38. 20 years later, you're 58. 20 years later, you're 78. You got at least two 20-year careers after the military, right? So thinking in terms of long-term, what do I really want to be? And sometimes I take veterans through a drill, depending on the personality. Either it's morbid or it's happy. But the morbid one is, you just passed away. You're 90 years old. You passed away. What are they going to write about you in your obituary? What are they going to say you did, right? The other one is, you're turning 100 years old and a reporter wants to do an interview with you on TV. Hey, what have you done in your life? So if you can say, well, I would like to be able to tell that person these things, now's the time to start figuring out how you're going to make that a reality. One of my other favorite proverbs, it's an unknown Chinese proverb, I think, but it says, paper stacked a sheet at a time will eventually reach the sky. So when you think about when you're younger, when you start leaving the military, if you exercise every day, if you do disciplined things every day, over the course of the next 40 years, when you're older, you're going to be able to do things that are going to make life more enjoyable, more rich. You can't wait until you're 60 years old and say, okay, now I'm going to get in shape. It's going to be really, really hard to stack a bunch of pieces of paper towards the end of your life. So it takes a lot of daily dedication and focus to do it, but with an aim for, why am I doing this? What's the end result? And if that end result isn't more pleasurable than the pain it takes you to get there, you're going to divert to something else.
Yeah. Outstanding. Yeah. And this next question is from @SalCameHome. How does identity shift impact mental health after leaving the military? Thank you, Sal.
Yeah, it's tied up completely into sense of hope and purpose. Because when you're in the military, you know what your mission is. If you're confused about your mission, your squad leader, team leader is going to put it someplace where they're going to reinforce the fact that you know what your mission is.
Yes.
Then you leave the military, and now you're I used to be something. What's your next mission?
Yep.
And that goes right into what do you want your life to be in 20, 30 years. Boone Cotler passed away last year, and Boone, back in 2010, he and I connected early on, and we started really pushing and talking about the Spartan Pledge. And if you're not familiar with the Spartan Pledge, just Google it. It's a very simple thing that it's a promise made between two warfighters that says, I will not take my life by my own hand until I talk to my battle buddy first. And my mission is to find a mission to help my warfighter family. And Boone used to say, if you don't have a mission, then your mission is to find a mission.
Yep.
And the veterans that I see that they're really going through life not on azimuth are the ones that don't have purpose, which means they don't have a mission. And if you don't have purpose, you don't have hope, then why live, right? And that's, I think, one of the disservices that the VA does is declare somebody 100% disabled and unemployable. And we will send you a check every month that gives you enough money to live on. And you don't have to do a damn thing in return for it, except show up once a year so we know you're still living and breathing, right? No expectation. That is not a life. Yep. And so that, I think that's the point of that identity shift is I could go all day long and say, I used to be a Ranger.
Yeah.
Right. But today, when I finished my rock climbing session, just like I do at the end of every rock climbing session, I do 2 minutes of planks. And during that 2 minutes of planks, I recite the Ranger Creed to myself. So it's something that continues to be implanted in me. I didn't do it for 10 years after I left the military. I think the first time I recited the Ranger Creed after I left the Army was when I went back to that the Ranger Regiment change of command in 2003. Now it's an everyday part of my life because it reminds me who I am and it reminds me of what I'm capable of doing.
Definitely. And I see a lot of men and women who just can't realize that they hung up the boots or put it on the uniform. They still live in that mentality. That's where they are. That's who they are. They can't open the box and say the picture now changes to this is who I am, not who I was. And I need to live forward and not in the past. Use the lessons, lessons from the past, but drive forward.
Well, any veteran that's portrayed on TV or in the movies, they all have their dog tags. They all wear their dog tags. I'm not even sure where mine are, right? But that's that mentality, that media portrayal of you're always that.
Yeah.
No, that's a part of your life that has put you in a position to be what you are now. And those skills and abilities and podcasts like this and others are really important to encourage people to take the lessons learned. We call it the Metroport Veteran Association here. And I'm right on the edge of Fort Worth. I actually live in a little town called Trophy Club, Texas. It's right in the middle of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And the second Saturday of every month, we go to a local place and we have breakfast together. And it's usually just bagels and coffee. But we have one veteran that we have about 6 of them stacked up for the next 6 months to talk. And they stand up in front of a group of 30 or 40 other veterans and they tell their story. They say, I was in the military and I did this. These are some of my experiences. And now I do this. And here's how I took my experiences from the military to help me become what I am now. We've got a guy that was a Navy nuclear engineer technician. And we want to talk about a selective school. The Navy only graduates 20 of them a year. And he was one of them. And after he left the military, he had a career path that ultimately landed him where he is now vice president of this huge marketing company and has a very, very nice living, very, very nice career. And he volunteers with us and helps veterans prepare for interviews and things like that. So how do you go from being this nuclear expert to being a marketing guy that sells things like this, right? But in $1 billion industry.
Yeah.
That's an interesting story, which means that if somebody else is in the Navy that's in the nuclear world, they can find a way to do what he's doing. So we love to share those kinds of stories. How do you go from being an infantry officer and a ranger to being a licensed professional counselor of all things? That is not your typical career path. And I've had conversations with E5s and E6s that are leaving the military. Usually it's a medical type of a discharge. And I ask them, especially from the Ranger Regiment, what's your plan after you get out? Oh, I don't know, probably move back to, Florida or wherever my family's from. Okay, what are you going to do when you get there? I don't know. I'll take some college classes. What are you going to study? And why? Well, I got GI Bill, so might as well use it. And I don't know, I'll study marketing. Okay, so are you going to be like a marketing person or a sales guy? What? I don't know. And I say, so what do you like most about being a leader in a unit like the Ranger Regiment? And they say, oh, I love helping these young soldiers become better versions of themselves, identify their strengths, identify their weaknesses, learn to overcome your weaknesses, right? And then I say, have you ever thought about being a licensed mental health provider? And they're usually like, what are you talking about? That's the stupidest thing in the world. Well, wait a minute. What do you think a licensed mental health provider does? They help someone become a better version of themselves, identify strengths and weaknesses. You don't have to sit facing each other in a couple of chairs. We do it on a rock climbing wall. We do it on this year, it's going to be the week after the 4th of July. I'm going to take 30 or 40 veterans to Colorado, and we're going to do a bunch of things during the week to include rock climbing. And then we're going to summit Pikes Peak towards the end of the week. And during that, when you walk up a 14,000 foot mountain like that, it's hard. The air is thin, and there is all of the pretense is stripped away. And you have somebody who was a radio guy or gal in, I don't know, you name it, the Marine Corps. And they're walking along because they got buddied up with somebody who was a first sergeant in the Ranger Regiment. And they're battle buddies for that day, and they get to walk and talk. And that is therapy beyond belief for both of them, right? And so you don't have to sit in a sterile clinical environment to be a good mental health provider. So I encourage anybody that's out there, any veterans that are out there that have educational benefits and you don't know how to use them, or you're interested in knowing more about the counseling world or what a career in that might look like, please reach out to me. Gallantfew.org is our website. My mobile phone number is everywhere. If you Google my name, you're going to find it. Call me up and make sure if I don't answer it, the AI is going to say, state the purpose of your calling. So make sure that you state it, because I'll see it in the text and I'll answer. But a licensed professional counselor, after they get through the hard part, which is the first couple of years of being an associate and accumulating all your hours so you're fully licensed, a licensed mental health provider can make $100,000 a year. So, and it is a good, fulfilling career. So anybody that's out there that's interested, please hit me up.
I think with that last sentence, our last question came in from the audience. Go There Now said, what gives you hope when working with veterans facing darkened seasons?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. Thank you. What gives me hope is past performance, past experience, right? To go from when I've done this now for so long that I very, very rarely ever get a new thing. When somebody says they're dealing with a something, it's probably not the first time I've ever heard that, which means that there are other people who have dealt with that thing that have overcome that thing. Yep. And so helping them understand that, don't get me wrong, I don't inherit anybody's problems, right? That's when we go back to the STAR, self-training and responsibility. It is on you. But I will help you identify, where are you right now? Where do you want to be? And how do we set that where you want to be so empowering and so pleasurable that it is greater than the pain it's going to take you to get there. That whole type of journey, that gives me an incredible amount of energy. You know, I am here this June, I'm turning 65. And I just became a licensed counselor 4 years ago. So it is not too late for anybody to do that. And or if not that, but something else, right? But it's stopping, assessing where you are, where do I want to be in the future, and how do I get there? And it doesn't matter how dark your times are, there's a path to get through that.
Outstanding. Great answer. And audience, again, thank you for your questions tonight. And I don't think you stumped Karl at all. He was on it tonight. And I'm going to share your website now with the audience so they can actually see it. There we go. So there's the Gallantfew. This is
there you go.
There's the 3 C's right here. So get your about page, basically your story, how it comes. It's a great website. I love the way it's put together. There's your professional picks there. Nice. You got your board. And then getting involved is always a big one, especially in the nonprofit world. How do you get involved with people? What you do, clinical counseling, climbing, veterans breakfast. It's all there, and it's a great organization. Like I said,
we're getting ready to add I think it's every Wednesday for a period of time, a virtual golf event.
Oh,
so
wow.
If somebody has a physical limitation they can't climb, and this is in the Roanoke, Texas area, we don't have it on the website yet because our volunteer just got with me yesterday and covered the cost to do it for a year. So that will be coming. We also, on the 14th of March, we're doing our gala. And our gala, it's a fundraiser. We gotta raise money to support what we do. Yeah, there's Boone Cutler and the Spartan Pledge. we've got to raise money to do what we do. But that Denim and Diamonds event, that is coming up at the Circle T Ranch in Westlake, Texas. Circle T is a phenomenal facility. If there's a veteran out there that would like to come that can't afford a ticket, let me know and I will cover your ticket. Right. Until we top out with attendees. But drop me a note and I will make sure that you get to come in.
That is awesome. Stop sharing this now. There we go.
And it's gallantview.org.
There it is, going across the bottom. It's in the chat right now. I put it in the chat a few times. So if you have not copied and pasted, just go back up to the chat. You'll see it again. And right now it's going across the bottom of the screen very slowly, so you can see it there. Nice. And get to that website and see how you can either gain some knowledge from it or get involved to help them out and do better things for other veterans. Karl, again, thank you for hanging out with us tonight.
And one thing I'd like to add real quick, Rich, is things like the subconscious restructuring workshop. We do that for free for veterans.
Nice.
And it's virtual. So it does not matter where you are in the world. I have done these workshops with active duty Navy Seabees leaving Okinawa. So it's just a matter of juggling the time zone and making sure that we got a good internet connection. So if anybody's interested in that, we can set that up. If you are a veteran in the state of Texas and you have not gotten any kind of clinical counseling, I provide clinical counseling for veterans in the state of Texas at no charge. In this area, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I can do it in person or virtual. Anywhere else in the state of Texas, I'll do it virtual. And about 90% of the veterans that I see on a weekly basis are virtual sessions. So I'm trained in eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing. The VA calls it EMDR. And I'm trained in brain spotting, which are two very effective. I like brain spotting actually better than EMDR because if a veteran has traumatic brain injury history, EMDR can be problematic, but brain spotting doesn't require rapid eye movement. So if you've ever thought about talking to a licensed counselor about anything that's going on, and you've just I don't want the VA to know, I don't report to the VA, I don't fill out any papers, I don't report anything to the state. Everything that happens between me and that veteran is 100% confidential. So take advantage of me.
Definitely. If you're in Texas, especially in Texas or Colorado as well, right? You can put your license in both.
That is correct. Yep.
And I'm sure you have built a network over your 4 years of doing this now that you probably have people throughout the country where you can recommend a veteran go to if they want to sit down.
Well, coming in April, I will be able to get licensed in Georgia.
Nice.
And so I will start expanding into some other initially Ranger predominant areas, but we'll continue to grow. And I am always looking for one of the challenges for somebody that goes into the mental health field is after you graduate with your master's degree, it still can take you 2 to 3 years to get fully licensed, which means the VA is not going to hire you as a resource, which means you can't take insurance. You got to cash pay, and nobody wants to cash pay a new counselor because they're a new counselor. Why should, I need to go find somebody that knows what they're doing. So we have a program where we help veterans that are in that associate thing get hours. We can reimburse them in the state of Texas right now. We can't reimburse outside of the state of Texas yet, but we're working on the ability to do that. So if you are a veteran who is an associate, whether it's licensed mental health provider, licensed clinical social worker, licensed professional counselor, if you have that associate tag and you're having trouble getting your hours, again, hit me up because I can help you with that.
Outstanding. That's an awesome offer. Misfit Nation, take heed to that. And if you're in that path, reach out to Karl and get the help you need to get to the next level of helping others. Karl, as we get ready to leave here, we already found out how to get in contact with you. We learned a lot about you tonight. Now I want you to give the Misfit Nation, our audience, 3 things they can start doing tomorrow to become better people.
Yeah, first thing is it's all rolled up into one. Go to the Gallup website and take the asthma check. So figure out where you are right now today, emotionally, physically, spiritually, professionally, and socially. And then think about if you're not happy with where you are today. The second thing is, where do I want to be in those areas? And then the third thing is, how do I get from here to there?
Outstanding. Karl, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. It's been awesome. I learned a lot.
Rich, appreciate
it. And you're welcome back anytime you want to come back and just share what you're up to now or where the Gallant Few is at this time.
One parting thought I'll leave with you, and I don't tell veterans thank you for your service. I tell them thank you for my freedom.
Nice.
And where that came from is a buddy of mine who is a Ranger veteran, younger. I'm from the 1900s. He's from the current millennium. But he, as an intel analyst, fed information into the chain of command that led to a deadly raid on the wrong compound. And as he got there and picked through the rubble and started identifying the people and talking to the survivors, the women and children that were still left, he said for about 15 minutes, he was the only one that knew that they had hit the wrong place. And then he had to go own that and take it back up the chain of command. And he is now, his name's Tim Spalla. He's a licensed professional counselor in Denver. And Tim is an expert in moral injury. And Tim's definition of moral injury is very simple. It's the belief that I'm going to hell. God can't forgive me for the things that I have done. I'm absolutely going to hell. So when Tim and I spoke at an American Counseling Association conference 2 years ago, and we're talking about his story, my story, and the work that we do with veterans and what moral injury is. And Tim tells his story about this horrible disaster raid that hit the wrong place and the dead people that he is now responsible for. And I looked out at all these counselors and I said, so Tim's a veteran you've never seen before. He walks into your office for his first counseling session. You look at his intake paperwork and you see, oh, he's a veteran. What's the first thing that you say? And they were like, thank you for your service. And I turned to Tim and I said, Tim, thank you for your service. And their jaws dropped because I'm thanking him for destroying a village of innocent people. And so at that moment, I said, so you have to be very careful, especially in the mental health world. You can be very careful with your terminology because Tim will never come back to you after that for help because you have hurt him more by that. So when you say, thank you for my freedom, freedom implies sacrifice. And our military has to do things that are unpleasant and sometimes the wrong thing. But they do it because our country has required them to do it. They don't choose where they deploy. They go where they're sent. And when that happens, the things that they do, that's on us. So we got to thank them for guaranteeing our freedom by putting their lives out there on the line. So Rich, thanks for my freedom.
No problem. Thank you for my freedom. So here we go. Misfit Nation, I hope you learned a lot tonight. I did. I know the people in the chat tonight did. And I hope you took notes and will visit Gallant Few's website, gallantfew.org. Remember, if you're feeling that darkness, if you let the walls start caving in, don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Today was great with you. Tomorrow will be even better with you as well. Without you in it, we'll be lost. There will be people that miss you. Take out that little 1-inch piece of paper out of your wallet. Call those 3 names that are on there. They want to hear from you. If you're so embarrassed, say again, sir.
Take the Spartan Pledge with them.
Yeah, take the Spartan Pledge with you. It's right on the website. If you just search Spartan Pledge and Boom Cutler, it pops up everywhere. There's an awesome video with the fireman's axe on it. It has it written on the fireman's axe. It's an awesome engravement on there. Take care of that. I know a lot of people don't want to call 988. Take it, dial 988. Take option 1 if you're a veteran. If you're not a veteran, follow the prompts. If not, contact us. We'll chat with you until we get someone that's actually licensed in your area to help you and get you the resources you need so you're with us way into the future. So till next time, be humble, stay hungry, and just keep hustling. Because you know who we are?
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation show. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all our past episodes and get some of the great Misfit Nation gear for you and your family. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling because we are Misfit Nation. Misfit Nation.